everybody. Well, it's cool weather. In fact, we're supposed to have a pretty good storm this weekend. And that means that things are cooling off and I'm going to start making sourdough again so that my house doesn't get heated up when it's hot. But when it's cool, I'm good. So I'm going to make sourdough bread and I'm going to add rosemary and dehydrated minced garlic. So this is so tasty and I'm just really excited about it. So let me show you how to make it. Now I'm gonna not show you every step because I've already got that in my feeding my sourdough starter video, and I've also got a video out there of making sourdough bread. I'm gonna follow the same process. It's just I'm gonna add some stuff in. So I'll show you those steps and show you how I make it. So I've been feeding this sourdough starter. I fed it last night, and then I fed it again this morning, and it's nice and bubbly. It's perfect. So I am going to I'm going to zero out the scale, and then I'm going to put 200 grams of starter in here. So that's how we're going to start. This is such a satisfying process. I don't know what it is about it, but making your own bread is just so satisfying. 201. I can live with that. Okay, and I'm just going to set this in here, and then I'm going to tear the scale and zero it. So now you can see. So now what I'm going to do is add 320 grams of water. And everything in sourdough, you do it by weight. You want good measurements, and I weigh in grams. I think it's just more accurate. So I've got the scale at 0. And I'm going to add just a splash more because I'm adding these dehydrated ingredients. It came out okay not doing that, but I think I just want that just a little bit more of moisture. So I added 325 grams instead of 320. So put the water in it. And now we're going to add bread flour. And you can use all-purpose flour. I'm going to use a mix of 50-50, so it's a total of 500 grams of flour. So I'm going to add 250 grams, tear that back out, so it's back to 0. I'm going to add 250 grams of bread flour. Okay, move that out of the way. And then we're going to add 250 grams of all-purpose flour. And I didn't tear it because I'm going to total it up to 500 grams. So you could tear it or not, it's up to you. But I know it's going to be 500 total, so. And the reason you want to weigh your ingredients, especially your flours, is because depending on how you measure it, if you put it into a measuring cup, it could pack down and you'll get a totally different amount, and then it will dry out your dough. And the last thing I want to do is make my dough too dry. So I've got all my flour in there and all the water. Let's take this off. And this is just beautiful starter. I mean, it is just gorgeous. So it's got lots of little yeasty beasties in there that are gonna make my sourdough just beautiful. Now I'm just gonna mix it up. And you're not gonna knead this. You don't need to knead it. You're just gonna let time and your sourdough starter do all the work. So I'm gonna get it mostly mixed together. And then I'm gonna go get my hands wet and stick them in there, and that's the best way to mix it. So let me go do that. And these dough whisks really are nice. Not necessary, but it sure gets the job done quick. Okay, so now what we need to do is just make sure all this flour is moistened. So in these corners, on the sides, I'm gonna mix all of that in. That's why your hands are your best tool. Clean hands, of course, but and you don't need to overmix this, but you do want to get all these little dry places here in the corners. You see there's still some flour, so I want to make sure that's all thoroughly mixed. Okay, isn't that beautiful? So now what I'm going to do is flatten this out a little bit, and then I'm going to walk away and let this do its magic for 2 hours. And it's called autolyse. We're not adding salt yet, which is the flavoring, well, one of the flavorings, because that would retard the process, and we don't want to do that. We want to give the dough time to do its work. So for right now, we just mixed up the starter, flour, and water, and flatten it out and come back in 2 hours. Then we'll add the salt and our seasonings. So I will bring you back at that point. All right, it's been 2 hours. So I have 11 grams of sea salt weighed out. I'm gonna open this up. And you can see it's kind of relaxed a little bit. I patted it down, but you want it a little bit relaxed. So I'm just gonna sprinkle the sea salt over the top as evenly as you can, but you don't have to worry because it's going to get distributed as you fold it. I'm going to be folding this 5 times tonight. So I wet my hands, and now I'm going to just lift this up, stretch it, and fold it. I'm going to turn it around. And again, this will be in a video. I will leave a link to it above. But you just stretch and fold, and you're doing this all 4 directions, and it will be for 5 times. I let it sit for 2 hours, and then after this it'll be every half hour. So I was going to add in the garlic and rosemary at this point, but you know what? I think I'm going to wait and add it in the next round. So you stretch and fold, and then you turn it over, and we'll flatten it out because I got to get my hands cleaned again. You'll flatten it out, and then you will let it sit for another 30 minutes. So we're going to do that, and then when we come back, we will add in the garlic and the rosemary. So I'll bring you back when I do that. All right, it's been half hour and I'm back. So what I'm going to do now is I've got my minced garlic, and this is crushed rosemary, but I think I want to break it down just a little bit more. They're not huge pieces, but I think I'd like it a little finer for the bread. So I'm going to put, probably a good tablespoon, maybe a little more. About a tablespoon and a half. And this is my little bitty molcajete. It's a Mexican mortar and pestle, but I love my molcajetes. And I'm just going to break it up just a little. It doesn't have to be much because this is crushed rosemary. I just don't want to bite into a big chunk. I want to just have the flavor mixed in. So just kind of break it up a little bit. And it's totally up to you how much. And I also decided I'm going to add a little bit of Parmesan cheese. I've never done that before, but you know what? It sounds good. And it sounds good. I'm going to try it. I'm flexible that way. So I'm going to take this, and you can maybe see it's really relaxed a lot more since last time. And that's what happens each time you fold the dough and let it rest, it relaxes more. So I'm going to just sprinkle this over the top. And you really what you're doing is you just want it to be, let's see if I can get it where you can see it. You're just going to get an even layer. So I'm going to just do this. And it looks like a lot, but you got to remember, when I bake this tomorrow, it's going to rise. Let me turn on another light. Generator's running, we can do that. All right, so now I'm going to take the granulated garlic. No, I'm sorry, it's not granulated. This is minced. So it's dehydrated and minced, and it's just nice little pieces. It's not big chunks. And it's not a powder. So, hope you can see that. That's about a tablespoon, and I'm going to just sprinkle that and see what it looks like. I may add a little more. I think I will. And I'm just doing this mostly by how it looks, because you just want to make sure that every bite you're going to have garlic and rosemary. All right, so oh, and it smells so good. Oh, this is going to be wonderful. All right, so this is what I have so far. I'm not going to put a lot of Parmesan. I just want to mix that in so there's a little bit of that flavor. maybe a tablespoon and a half. So now I'm gonna fold this. So let me go wet my hands again. And always when you're working with the dough, if you wet your hands, it just helps because it helps it not be quite so sticky. And I use my scraper to help me, and that also makes it easier. So I'm gonna just stretch and fold. And this is the second fold, so there's 5 folds total. So, and you can see how much better this is stretching than it did originally. So you just go each direction, so 4 times you fold it. And this is developing the gluten. It's equalizing the temperature, and it's incorporating all the ingredients. So they're just thoroughly mixed in without kneading it. We're just really not going to do all that work. Right now, all I'm going to do is flatten it out. And again, that's to equalize the temperature, but also equalize ingredients. Okay, good enough. So I'm going to put the lid back on. And I'm going to let this sit 30 minutes, 3 more times, 30 minutes and then fold, and that's going to be 3 more times. And then I'm going to put this in the refrigerator overnight. Well, today I've got a lot going on, so I'm making a few different videos that you'll see at different times as I find time to edit them. So I have my dessert apple pie made in a sheet pan. That's in the oven. I've got Mississippi pot roast going for dinner. And I'm trying these out for the first time. I don't know if anyone else has tried them before, but if you have, let me know and let me know what you think. I'll be finding out tonight what I think. But I'm hoping this just makes for easy cleanup once in a while. Probably won't use it every time, but today is busy, so it's going to be a time saver, I hope. So, and that's a crock pot liner, so we'll see how it works. So now I'm moving on to sourdough bread that I have started last night, and I'm making rosemary, garlic, Parmesan sourdough bread. And I've made the rosemary and garlic before, but I decided in the middle of mixing that in that I was going to use Parmesan too. So we're going to see how that turns out tonight. Having that with that pot roast is going to be amazing. So I've got all my equipment out here, and I have this marble board that I got from World Market yesterday, and I'm really excited. I used this for the pie crust, and it works beautifully. I have a marble square that when we built our house and we were picking out all the stone for the house, I asked the tile guys if they could make me some marble for baking. And they did, and it was beautiful. They took a large square tile and polished it, and I've been using that, and it's wonderful. The only problem, it's a little too short for most things. When you're doing breads or pie crust, it's just not always big enough. So when I found this, I was really excited. And it was $39.99, but I had a gift card for my birthday. And then I also had a coupon. So this ended up costing me about $10. And I am so excited about it. It's heavy, and so I'll either have to use it on another part of my island or swap it out, because I usually cook right here. But it is so nice. It's big enough. It's cold, which that's what stone does, and very polished. So far I am loving this. And I'm going to use this today as I make my sourdough bread. So let me get that out of the refrigerator and we'll get started. All right, this has been in the refrigerator since last night. And oh, it's about 12:30 the next day. Now what I've noticed is when I make this version with the garlic and the rosemary, it doesn't rise as much in the refrigerator. Usually I get a little more size out of it. And I was kind of worried when I made it the first time, but it came out beautiful. It did a great job. So this is what it looks like. And I'm going to cut this in half and make 2 loaves. And so I'm going to start that right now. And let's see, how do I want to do this? And this bench scraper just does such a wonderful job. Anything else is a little bit awkward, trying to get it cut in half and out of there. So that's about half. You can weigh this if you choose. Some people do. I don't think it's necessary. And I'm going to use a little bit of rice flour, and this is brown rice flour. Not a lot. We don't want a lot on there. And this is the top. You always find your top. It's fairly smooth, and the bottom is usually going to be more rough. So now I'm just going to roughly shape it, very roughly, into a rectangle. And this is the pre-shaping. So what we'll do is we'll pre-shape it, and then this is going to rest on the bench for about 20 minutes. And then we'll come back and shape the actual loaves. So just get a rough rectangle and then press, fold and press, fold and press. And any big bubbles like this, you just want to pop those. You definitely want bubbles. That's what helps give the rise to your bread. You just don't want big holes in your bread, or I don't. I don't think it adds anything. So we're just gonna do that, pinch the seam, and then I'm gonna leave it just kind of rough shape. I'm gonna leave it sitting there while I make the next loaf, and I'm seam side up. So we're going to get the other half out. And again, you've got your smooth top and your rough bottom. Well, I decided to speed this part up because I just showed you one loaf, so just wanted to show you also that how the minced garlic and the Parmesan and the rosemary got evenly distributed just by folding it. So just going to go through this part quickly. Now I'm just going to cover this with a little plastic bag. And you know what? I just saved these from the grocery store. But you can use plastic wrap, you can use whatever you want. It doesn't matter. It's going to be there 20 minutes. And that's just to keep it from drying out. And if you're in a humid climate, you may not even have to cover it. It is so dry here that if I don't cover it, it starts crusting up. And when it does that, it's going to inhibit the rise. So that's not a good thing. So I'm going to clean this stuff up and set the timer, let that go for 20 minutes, and then we'll be back to shape the loaves. All right, we've let this dough sit for about 20 minutes. I'm going to take the plastic off, and it's still nice and soft. Now for this next step, I don't want too much flour or rice flour or anything on the board. Because we're going to shape the loaves, we want it to just very lightly stick to the board. So we have seam side up and our pretty side here. And you always pick your pretty side because it's going to be smooth and it's going to give the bread that wonderful crust. So now we're just going to, again, roughly shape it out. And again, it's something to do with when I added the rosemary and garlic. I'm not sure why, but it doesn't rise a lot at this step. It will once I put it in the oven. So just kind of spread this out just a little. I think we're going to do it this way. And you're going to fold this about 2/3 over. So 1/3 and then 1/3. And you could shape this into a round, in a bowl, or you can shape any way you want. I want to make baguettes. So you fold it down, press it down. And this is your final shaping, so make it what you want it to look like. Now I'm going to fold this again right to the edge and just press down. So what we've done is we've done thirds. And press it down. Now get that seam on top, and we're going to really just kind of pinch it a little bit. Make sure it's sealed. All right. Now, this is why you don't want too much flour, because you're going to roll it. And as it slightly sticks, that allows you to shape it. And if it were just sliding around, it would just do this without rolling. So, and I'm just going to slightly taper the ends. I'm not going to make real pointy ends. I just want a nice loaf. Okay, now we're going to put this in our baking couche, our linen baking cloth. And this is just going to give it a place to rise. And I'm going to lightly dust that with my rice flour, just to keep it from sticking. And I'm also going to put just a little dusting of cornmeal. Not a lot. Now this loaf is going to go seam side up into the couche. And just kind of pat it into your shape. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but because you know what? This is a rustic, homemade, artisan sourdough. So I'm going to get the couche ready for the next loaf. All I did is took a big fold and put that over the other loaf. And that's going to keep it from drying out. It's just going to give it shape. So a little bit of rice flour, a little bit of cornmeal, and we're going to get our second loaf ready. Now the nice thing, I'm thinking about making a chocolate cherry sourdough loaf. I was thinking about maybe cranberry and orange sourdough loaf. If anybody's interested in those, let me know in the comments. the nice thing with sourdough, you can make it more sour or you can make it more mild. This I wanted a little more sour, so it all comes into play when you're feeding your sourdough starter. But if you want to make it a milder starter, you can do that. You can also make it more sour. You have so many options. So if you're interested, just let me know below. This one is a little more sour. And what I've done, there go my dogs. I haven't discarded it when I fed it. Hang on, I gotta go get the dogs quiet. That's what you get when you have a hound dog. A blind one at that. Okay, so now I folded it in third and pinched it. Now I'm gonna do the other side. In just a few minutes, it will start to crust up. So you really, if you live in a dry climate, you kind of have to work fast. But this is kind of long and skinny on this end, so I'm gonna fold that. And pinch it. Excuse me. Okay, so now I'm just gonna shape it. And you want the ends a little bit tapered because that seals it. And you want to seal those layers. Okay. And that's even sticking maybe a little too much, but it's all good. So now I'm going to find my seam right there, and I'm going to put that in the couche. Cover it up, and we're just going to leave that while the oven gets heated up high enough. And since I have the pie dessert in there, it's halfway heated. So this will take about 30 to 45 minutes. All right, the sourdough has been resting, probably 30 minutes, maybe longer. Kind of lost track of time while I did other things. I'm getting set up to make soap, and I'll do a video on that for anybody that's interested. And so now we're gonna get the loaves ready and get them in the oven. So I've got the oven preheated to around 475. I've got a baking stone. Now you can see me. I have a baking stone in there, and I just put a really large roasting pan in there that I'm going to use to cover the bread when I first put it in, to kind of steam it and give it that wonderful crust that we love with sourdough. So I've got just a flat baking sheet, and you can use anything. It doesn't matter. We're just going to use that to transport the dough loaves into the oven. And I've got it covered with parchment paper, which is going to stay with the loaves, so that's why what's underneath doesn't matter at all. So, roll the sleeves up, get to work. Okay, so I've got my breadboard, which is, it's a nice long piece of wood, and it's just got a beveled edge. You don't have to have one of these. This makes it easy to move the loaf out of the couche and put it on the parchment paper. So I'm going to put just a little bit of cornmeal on the side where I'm putting the board. And what that does is that just keeps it from sticking to the board. Let's get you a little closer. Maybe you can see. Not well, but you'll probably see the next loaf better. So I'm just going to angle this down on the counter next to the loaf of bread, and I'm going to use the couche to flip the bread over. So the seam side was up. Now seam side's down. And then I can just bring it over here, slide it off, And that was so easy to do. So we'll just position this where we want it. And I'm going to brush some of that cornmeal off of the loaf because I really don't want that on my crust. And I'm just going to brush that down onto the couche because that's just going to get taken outside and flapped around, get rid of all the stuff on it. So we're going to do the same thing on this loaf, just a little bit of cornmeal. And let's see if you can see better now. I'm going to put you up here and maybe you'll be able to see it. Then we'll move you back down. So we have the couche and put the board down at an angle, flip the fabric, and there it is. And so I'm just going to take some of that off. Okay, now I'll move you back. Sorry about moving you around so much. Okay, so now I'm just going to slide that off, brush off the loaf. And it seems like a lot of steps and a lot of work. Honestly, it's not. It's really not difficult. But again, I encourage you, if you're interested, go to the other videos, and they're much more step by step. And once you do it once or twice, you're not even thinking about the steps because it just is second nature. It just makes sense. And I'm all about what makes sense. Okay. So I've got my loaves here. Let me get a little bit of water. Because now we're going to cut the tops. And this allows the sourdough, because you're using a wild yeast, you're not using a commercial store-bought yeast. You have to treat it a little bit different. So when you score and slice the tops of these, it allows the bread to quickly rise. And so I'm using a lame, which is basically a fancy French name, but it's a handle that has a razor blade attached. And I dip it in water because I think it helps. So this one, you're going to slice, I'm going to do maybe 3 this way. And you want them kind of deep, so make sure. All right, and I dip it in water in between because it just helps the razor blade go through. This one I think I'm going to do different, and I'm going to do long ways. So I'm going to come at an angle all the way down the side. And again, all right, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay. And I'll probably change the razor blade after this one. It doesn't last very long because these are very acidic, and for some reason it just makes the razor blade dull very fast, and that makes it harder to cut through the loaves. So now I'm going to transfer these to the oven onto the baking sheet. Onto the baking stone, and then I'm going to spray them with water, and I want to spray quite a bit because that's going to allow them to really get that fast rise and that beautiful crust. So let me take you over there. All right, I hope you can see this okay. And I need to work quickly because I want this to stay very, very hot. So I don't think you're going to see it from there. That I think is going to give you a little better view. So I pulled the baking stone out. I've got the loaves of bread, and I'm just going to pull the parchment paper off. Now I'm going to spray them really well. then cover them with this roasting pan that's very hot, that I've got preheating. Now I'm going to let that bake for about 20 minutes. And this creates like a little oven in itself, in its steam oven. So, and that's what we're trying to do, is steam this. So we spray it well with water, cover it up with the hot roasting pan, and give it that time to rise and just come out really nice. And it also helps form the beautiful crust. So now we're going to let that bake 20 minutes. Then we're going to take the roasting pan off and let it bake probably about another 20 minutes. So I'll bring you back then. Okay, so it's been 20 minutes. I'm going to take this out, and that oven is so hot. So let me show you what this is looking like. It's risen a lot. It's looking beautiful. So now I am going to close this back up, put the timer on for another 20 minutes, and it will probably be done then. We'll have to check it, but it's usually done in another 20 minutes. Okay, it's been almost 20 minutes, and because one loaf I made a little smaller because I didn't weigh them to make them equal, one of the loaves is definitely ready. And it got a little crispy, but that's okay. And it just is beautiful. So I'm going to put this one out to cool, and the other one will come out in just a minute or two. Okay. And there is the second loaf. And the way that you check to make sure this is done is you turn it over and you tap on the bottom, and it should sound hollow. But this is done, and it smells amazing, and I'll let you know later how it is. But I know that this is going to be so good. Well, we had this with the Mississippi pot roast for dinner. And oh boy, was it amazing. It went fast. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something, and give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.